Do you have the audacity to love who you are? Maybe you're looking at us like a deer caught in the headlights right now, because it's not a question you often get asked, is it? My guest today on Awaken and Ascend is Sarah Moore, and she's going to tell us how to find the audacity to love who we are. I'm Jennifer Regular, your host, and also the Soul Illuminator at Lighting the Path. You can learn more about that on my website, lightingthepath.ca. But hosting this YouTube show brings me so much joy because I get to bring phenomenal people from all around the world, making a difference, sharing their journeys, and teaching us how to live life more fully and on purpose. I want to thank all of you for being here and welcome Sarah Moore, who is joining us from Columbus, Ohio. She is a women's leadership coach with over a decade of experience. Sarah coaches women who struggle with self-doubt and want more of one thing: confidence. Whether that's a senior executive landing a global brand, a wife and mom who's tired of wondering if she's enough, or a college student trying to figure out her next steps. Sarah is the creator of the Pump Up Session, a one-of-a-kind, fully curated mini retreat designed to help women reset their thoughts and quiet that internal chatter. Welcome, Sarah. It's such a joy to have you here. I'm so excited for this because the audacity to love who we are. Like, do we even give ourselves permission for that?
I love that you opened with that question. I've never thought to phrase it as a question. We typically use it as a definition. So that was beautiful. It gave me goosebumps, and now I'm going to use that too.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm curious where that became a passion for you, Sarah. What inspired you to even help women in this way?
I think it found me. I think for so many years, I've been trying to understand, who am I as a woman? Why do I struggle with the things that I struggle with? How do I make sense of this mind, body, and spirit? And when I first started my coaching journey, I just knew I was passionate about coaching. I'd previously worked in the lingerie industry, and we were in the business of changing women's lives. I didn't join it for that reason. I joined lingerie because I thought there was a real niche in the market that was needed, helping a woman find a bra that fit well. And then I quickly realized, once I started doing that work, oh, wow, this transforms the way a woman feels about herself. So unknowingly, I was already on that journey. And then when I landed in coaching, like I said, I knew it was for me. I knew I wanted to help myself more, give myself more tools, because I was still feeling unsure about who I was in the world and my direction. And then I just got busy trying to figure out how to be a coach in the world and make money. And so I was making up niches and just trying to help people. And then slowly but surely, over the course of time, years, I realized that, oh yeah, this is so much bigger than me, right? That us women struggle with so many things that are similar, i.e., we're so much more alike than we are different. And then somewhere in the midst of that, we landed on this phrase, full of herself, right? What does it mean to be full of ourselves? And I'd heard Oprah say that once at an event that I was at years ago, and I loved it. And then I didn't think much about it, but clearly it got stored in my whole system. And I realized in every coaching conversation I'm having, that's what we're up to. We're trying to understand and explore, what does it mean for you to be full of yourself? And that phrase often incites thoughts of arrogance, somebody being conceited, being too big for their britches. And we really decided as a team that it's an act of humility, that it's so aligned with God or a higher power or whatever you might use to describe something greater than yourself. And then in there we said, wait a second, how do we define it if we don't want it to be defined that way? And very quickly and organically, we landed on this phrase, finding the audacity to love who you are.
Mm.
And I love the choice of that word, audacity. I didn't choose it again. It fell perfectly into place. It feels punchy. It feels like it's got a little grit to it, and that reflects who I am as a person. And it's punchy and it's gritty to say, who am I? How do I want to move through this world? What decision am I going to make in this moment that's aligned with what I want? And it's brave work and it's beautiful work, and it's the work I'm doing day in, day out for myself, because life isn't linear.
Yes, it is not linear. You're absolutely right. There's so many pivots we take along the way, and it's important too to pause at those pivots and reflect because we're so used to this go, 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 action oriented way of being that we kind of don't take that time to pause and to reflect and to evaluate and be okay with the ebb when we're always talking about the flow.
Mm,
And so I love how things flowed into your life, as you mentioned, and then yeah, bringing that in the ebb and then bringing it back out in the flow. And I love that so much. And having the audacity, it really is a cool word. Like even just saying it, like the audacity, like you're standing in your power, even just saying that word. And it does have grit and it has edge. And it speaks to what we stand for as well. Having the audacity for that self-expression is also an act of self-love, wouldn't you say?
100%.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a greater expression of self-love. And I think one thing I've learned as somebody who's leading women, in lots of different situations, is my audacity often looks big and bright, and I take up a lot of space, right? In some of our live workshops that we do, not in some, in fact, in all of them, we incorporate dancing. I think dancing is one of the most vulnerable things that we can do. So we learn a lot about ourselves,
Mm.
especially when it's in a community of other women. And so I'm flying around the room. I'm doing twirls. I'm comfortable with that. One, because I like dancing. Two, because I'm in an environment I've curated, so I'm more comfortable. And what I've learned is that's not true for everybody. And it's
Mm.
not true for me in different contexts where I feel less comfortable. And so while audacity, I think, is punchy and it is gritty, we can also feel very tender,
Mm.
very afraid, uncertain, and just certain enough, all in the same moment to still be audacious. So I would say within the last year, I've made more space for what does audacity or your version of full of yourself mean for you, and making sure that there's room for all evolutions of that, because I think it's very easy to think it's got to be big because of the way I tend to move through the world, and I don't think that has to be true, and nor is it true at all.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I love how you're talking about dancing across the dance floor and twirling because I do exactly the same thing. For me, that's how I come back to myself as well because it brings me in, it unwinds me, it frees me, I dance my spirit free, and that's how I come back to myself where I'm not a good sitter. I can't sit still, or I built up to it now, but for a long time, I couldn't sit still and meditate and do that quiet meditation. There's different forms of meditation, of receiving information, of receiving ourselves, our own energy and our guidance and our intuition, allowing that to flow. And I find dance is one way to do that. And like just as there's many forms of meditation, there's different forms of coming back to ourselves and how we express ourselves and being able to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. I really resonated with that too about accepting our vulnerability and not shaming it or judging it or being afraid to share it and show it.
Yeah. I think, when I think about vulnerability, it is to feel. And as humans, we have this huge range of feelings that we're entitled to. And yet we're not taught how to feel. It's taken for granted that we know how to do that.
Mm.
So I historically, and even to this day, spend a lot of time up here, right? This kind of brain just going round and round thinking I can think my way out of a situation, or I can figure it out. And I spend so much effort. I think that's the basis for my whole work, learning how to surrender.
Mm.
Even that sentence is a juxtaposition, right? Like I expend a lot of effort trying to understand how to surrender. It
Yeah.
does, it comes a lot more naturally to me these days, and yet sometimes it's still so confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so surrendering into this body of mine, right? There's a phrase I absolutely love, and it's, when I change the momentum of my body, I change the momentum of my mind,
Oh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So dancing or breathing or walking or even humming, because it activates our vagus nerve,
Mm.
all of these lovely embodied practices that we can do to engage the wisdom of our body, where our intuition is housed, it's not housed up here, can then help to change the story and the trajectory and the momentum that the mind often sits inside of. It's lovely. It's a gift.
Yes. It
Yeah.
is a gift. It is a gift. And to be in the present moment is a gift. I mean, the word already makes it obvious, that present, being in the presence and allowing that gift and allowing us to share our gifts as well and really connect with that. And speaking of changing, I love that you're changing the narrative of full of herself, right? We hear that usually in a derogatory way. Oh, she's so full of herself, or he's so full of herself, or they're so full of themselves, And it's like, it's literally a brush off and a push away. But you're bringing that in. It's like, yeah, let's be full of ourselves. So tell us a little bit more about that. Help us change that narrative. What does it mean to be full of ourselves?
It means this, right? I'm literally going to demonstrate this because I can't think of any other way to do it.
I love it.
It's literally sort of standing in our power when we fling our arms out wide, thinking about the physical space that we take up and realizing that we're so much bigger than we even imagine. This energy that is around us, that we inhabit, that we share with the world. I mean, this is full. And so, what does it mean to stretch my arms into all of these areas around myself, occupy that space, bring some light to it, some awareness to it, and have that be a lifelong practice? I mean, this is bold, right? And to have my feet firmly planted on the ground and be able to express all of this to somebody else. And sometimes it looks like this, and sometimes it's kind of like this because I'm hiding and I'm unsure, and yet it's still a commitment to, how can it be 1% more in this moment? How can I make a little tweak? And so one of the skills that we teach, bring my chair back so I'm not talking over that loud noise, is bragging. I learned this from Regina Thomas Hauer, Mama Gina, who owns the School of Womanly Arts in New York. The ability to brag about ourselves is simply, let's talk well about ourselves. And it's such a gift. What I notice especially when I'm in a group of women and we're all practicing bragging, the first thoughts and also language and feelings that emerge are, ugh, brag about myself? Oh, and you want me to brag 3 or 5 things? Oh, I could maybe think of 1 or 2. That's the initial response. So interesting to witness that we don't think we could say 3 or 5 nice things about ourselves. And then I ask a woman to stand up in the group and brag. And even that, right? That's being full of ourselves. Let's take up that space. Let's be seen. And what happens most of the time when a woman starts bragging, she doesn't want to stop. And the experience of other women in the group receiving that is so rich. It's like, oh, I could brag about that thing too. Or what simply watching you brag lights me up. It gives me permission to know I could do the same too. And so it's this beautiful energetic exchange. And so skills like bragging, right? Instead of getting caught up in talking about the weather or what isn't working, let's say something real, and
Yeah.
let's say something wonderful about ourselves. And that, no matter the other person's reaction, because of course that depends on where they are in their life journey, that just puts a little dose of full of herself into the world that we all need to see and receive to remind ourselves of being committed to even more of who we are, even more
Yes.
joy. Yeah.
And it sounds like we're really celebrating that. Then
Yeah.
it's a real celebration, and to be able to share in that joy and that happiness, which has the potential to be exponential, right? Because it just builds up that energy, that positivity, that celebration, the love amplifies and inspires us all. I love that so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it truly is a celebration. Every time a woman in that particular scenario brags, I mean, we literally clap and cheer, and
Yeah.
you can see on her face, wow, I did that. That actually felt good. And so it's the skill of building self-esteem. And it was interesting because you reflected back to me that I said the word joy. And I often refer to an emotional scale that was
Uh-huh.
developed by Abraham Hicks.
Hmm.
Just sort of listing what are all of the really core feelings that we feel. And while feelings aren't facts, I think they're really important tools in our tool belt. We need to have a good range of emotional expression
Mm.
in order to create new belief systems, create new actions, create new outcomes. And joy is right at the top of the scale.
Yes.
And so when we see that, we think, okay, I want to reach for the top of the scale. It makes all the sense in the world. And what I say is actually, I'm constantly reaching for number 7, which is contentment,
Mm. Hmm.
right? And I define contentment as nothing needs to change for me to be okay.
Yes.
And so, yes to joy, yes to freedom, yes to love, yes to hopefulness, yes to positive expectation, all of these feelings that come before contentment, absolutely. And at the same time, this sweet spot of nothing needs to change right here. It,
Hmm.
it, it keeps me humble to the joy because I know it's fleeting. Again, not that I want to cut it off. And it also keeps me aware of the really hard stuff is here to teach me something, which again feels like humility. So I don't get stuck and embroiled inside of it.
Hmm.
I think that's a really sustainable place to come back to and operate from.
Yes, yes. Operate from is exactly what I was thinking. Like we're upgrading our operating system, how we operate and relate to the world through our frequency and our vibration. And as you say, those emotional labels that we put on that help us define where we feel most comfortable, where we feel most alive, most aligned to who we are and our expression of who we are in that moment, and to be okay with how that changes too. It doesn't change who we are. It may change how we're operating with the world and how we're operating in our daily lives at the time. And we have a different experience through that. But it effectively doesn't change who we truly are. No matter what's going on and outside of our life is happening outside in our life, and it has effect on the internal as well. However, it doesn't change the core essence of who we are. And I think that's really important too. And that also may help us have the audacity to love who we are when we can accept those different ways of being in the world, recognizing it doesn't actually change who we truly are. as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's something about that I needed to hear today. I wanted
Mm,
to hear.
mm,
Yeah. I'm going through a little bit of change in my life with regards to my business and the direction we're headed, and being reminded that, yes, there are a lot of external factors that are changing, and it doesn't change the core of who I am. Feels healing. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. That's the beauty of us coming together and sharing our truth and being able to express that, because then we get to hear what comes back to us. We receive feedback in some way, whether it's asked for or not. We receive something quite often, what we might be questioning, what questions we're sitting with in our lives. The answers come in really unexpected ways sometimes. I mean, there could be words on the side of a truck that goes by, or a license plate or something. You just happen to turn on the radio, or a song comes in, like there's a line from a song that comes into your head. Like, the answers just come sometimes when we give space to allow it to, and not get caught up in our overthinking mode where we're completely up here and lost our heart, our feeling, our emotions, our vibration, our frequency, and where we can operate from. We get to choose that
Mm.
too. Yeah, amazing. So, what else do you have to say about finding the audacity of loving who we are and the work you do? And in the introduction, I was mentioning about the pump up sessions you do. So, I'd love to hear how that all comes together in what you do, how you serve, Sarah.
Well, I'm sat here thinking about how learning doesn't come from experience, it comes from reflecting on the experience.
Mm,
And so I think that's what you've been speaking to is, sitting with ourselves, doing the inner work, whatever we might call that, just a commitment to do our work is reflection, right? And I think that's the basis of what Full of Herself is about, of what finding the audacity to love who we are is rooted in.
mm,
Because if we aren't consistently, this is my experience, personal and with many clients over the years, taking the time to reflect on what's working, what isn't, what just happened, what do we want more of, what do we fear, what do we desire, then we miss the sign on the side of the truck.
mm.
Right? We don't have as big of an awareness as we could have for the things that are supposed to nudge us in the direction that we actually want to go. And
Yes.
so coaching sessions with clients are reflecting. We're not getting stuck in the past. We're simply saying, okay, what did you try? What happened? Cool. How does that help us with where it is you want to be? How does that even shape where you want to be? Did we just add a little dot of color that brings it a tiny bit more into focus? And I think that's really what a pump up session is about too. It's a mini retreat. That's what we call it for women, to one, come together and be reminded you're not in this alone. So many women in this room are experiencing some version of what you're experiencing. And it's also a whole experience in vulnerability.
Mm,
Right? The definition of vulnerability, Brene teaches us this, Brene Brown, is risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure.
mm,
Right? So when we feel, uncertain, a little bit at risk, and emotionally exposed, which to some degree we do every day. Because if to be vulnerable is to feel, we can't move through our days without having some kind of feeling response to all the situations that we meet. And so I
mhm,
think the goal there is, how do we become emotionally regulated so that when we experience uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, we've got just enough tools to move through that moment or meet the moment in however we need to meet it. And so in a pump up session, we're almost stretching women just a little not too much, because we don't want to create undue stress, but just kind of nudge you a little in the direction of feeling vulnerability in all of the exercises that we do, so that you're preparing your system, preparing your body, your spirit for what life is ultimately giving you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of it's a gift. And I think that ability to regulate just enough is where then we're able to sit in contentment, more and more and more. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I love that, Sarah Moore, to give us more. I love it. And so, how do people connect with you?
I think the best way, Jennifer, is probably my blog. I've been writing that thing for almost a decade. Uh,
Wow.
the book I'm just about to release, also called Full of Herself, was born out of loving writing this blog, and we got a lot of great feedback on it. I'm sharing intimate stories, how I feel full of myself, how I'm falling way short, and how I'm course correcting. And so you can go to moresoulsessions.com, my website, and sign up for the blog there and stay connected with all of the updates that we have happening in the business. And then, of course, on Instagram at more.soul.sessions is probably the primary place that we're active.
All right, perfect. That's fantastic. And we'll have the link in the show notes down below too. So you can just click into that along with my website and a guide to living with passion and purpose that I give everybody as a thank you for watching and listening on Awaken and Ascend. Sarah, do you have any final words before we go?
You're a light, and thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for all of you that have been tuning in on Awaken and Ascend. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.